Hello, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and in today's video I'm going to be cooking the lentil walnut loaf, which I've never made before. So this is adapted from the She Glows cookbook. I know that's backwards because I'm streaming live, but Angela Lydon has actually done several cookbooks, and they're very, very popular. Really, really good recipes. And this one's actually been adapted for GERD. Here's a picture of it. And so I'm going to be making this. It's adapted, so I've taken out the ketchup, the garlic, the onions, the vinegar, the maple syrup. I've taken out all the good stuff. So we're just go ahead and throw it together and see how it turns out for dinner. And then tonight's topic is going to be medications and how, and I've got some actual studies for you guys to look at medications that are linked to GERD. You'll find this really, really interesting. Just a disclaimer, as always, I am not suggesting that you go off your medications, off of any of your medications. That's something you obviously need to work with your doctor if that's your goal, to get off your medications, which I think is a great goal. But you'll want to definitely work with your doctor. Your doctor knows you, your doctor knows your case, your doctor knows your situation. I don't. So, so let's get on with dinner. So the recipe calls for a cup of chopped celery and a cup of grated carrot. So I don't typically follow recipes. I just kind of do what's easiest. So I'm just going to be actually chopping these up, and then these are supposed to be all sauteed. I've got 3 carrots here. Hi Tracy. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think potatoes for a lot of us with GERD are our friend, although that's not the case for everybody. So I'm just going to put these into, I hate cooking on my stove, you guys, because it's crooked. Everything goes to one side, so I'll be stirring that frequently. I was going to say that, honestly, the next time I make this, I'll probably just throw all of this stuff into my food processor, because essentially what we're making here is like a hamburger meat that we're going to bake in a loaf. And I think you could probably just throw all of this in your food processor and mix it up raw, and then put it in your oven and bake it. I don't see why not. So up next is the leek, and I am going to put this in the food processor to combine it all together. So here I have what's left of the leek here. I'm just going to chop it up. I hope y'all are staying safe and dry and warm out there with all of the snow and blizzards and storms. We didn't get much here. I live on the coast, so we did get a little bit of snow. Not much. So really I'm just kind of softening these. They're going to go into the food processor. Let's see, so we've got our leeks, our celery, our carrot. This also calls for a third cup of grated apple. Probably about a third cup. It's a small apple. I think I'll just throw the whole thing in. So when I put this into my food processor, it'll get more chopped. Yeah, I'm just going to throw the whole thing in. So have any of you made this from the recipe file? Have any of you made this lentil walnut loaf yet? This particular recipe? Consider this recipe to be more like a, I don't know, maybe a special occasion or company type recipe, just because I don't know, it's just a little bit more work that goes into it than what I'm accustomed to. I'm accustomed to pretty quick and easy meals. Alright, so this is my food processor. I've got some Cuban beans going in my Instant Pot for tomorrow. Looking forward to that. It smells really good. Okay. So I've already actually cooked, I did a little bit of the work ahead of time. I went ahead and cooked my lentils. That's really easy. You just cook them in water until they're soft for about 20 minutes. Just watch them so they don't burn. Make sure you've got enough water on there. Too much water is fine because you can just drain it off when you're done. I've got my oven heating to 350. So I think we're ready to go ahead and combine this up. I'm actually going to start, this calls for a half a cup of breadcrumbs, and I've just got a couple of heels here and a piece of crispy sourdough bread. I think I'm just going to put those in first. It's hard. It's stuck. I thought that would chop that up. Oh shoot. Okay, so I won't do that one. We'll just do... I'm just making breadcrumbs. There we go. Okay, and so this calls for a half a cup of breadcrumbs. That might be way too much. But that's okay if it is, because I think I will take out, yeah, that's about a cup. So I'm going to take out some of that, and we'll put it back in if we need it. If we need something to make it more of a binder, if it's too thin. But I don't want to overkill. My husband always gives me a hard time because I don't follow recipes. So I'm going to try to kind of follow this one. Kind of, sort of. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and put this mixture in. You see it? Pretty, pretty, pretty. So leeks, apples, carrots, celery. Smells wonderful. Oh man, I'm going to need probably a bigger food processor. We'll see how this goes. I don't think this is all going to fit in there. Yeah. So I think I'll have to do this in batches. So we put in 3 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, which I actually already have this measured. Oops. And it calls for a cup of chopped walnuts. You can put those in and get those chopping. I have about a cup here. This is the last of my walnuts that my mom harvested and cracked for me over the holidays. Okay, I'm making a mess. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to take some of that out in order to fit all those lentils in. So this is where a bigger food processor would come in handy. So probably what I'm going to end up doing is just combine those lentils in and get them all mashed up, and then I'll just mix this together in a bowl. So in go the cooked lentils. Hi, Ann. Ann, have you tried this lentil walnut loaf yet? Okay, what am I missing? So this calls for currants or raisins. A third cup, so I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it and drop a palmful in. And it also calls for thyme and oregano and a half a cup of oat flour or any flour. So that's another, the flax and the beans and the flour are kind of like your binders. And you could use a gluten-free flour of your choice. It's getting thick. And it's a teaspoon of dried oregano and a teaspoon of dried thyme. I personally usually go a little easy with the thyme. It's not my favorite. If it's too much, I don't like it. Same goes for oregano. Too much and I don't care for it. Okay. So this is, I'm making a mess. I hate dirtying all these bowls. Let's go ahead and put it all into one big bowl. And we can kind of mix this by hand like you would do a meatloaf. It kind of looks like, pate or ground turkey meat. But I mean, it's got all good stuff in it, right? So I just want to mix this well so that flour, I can see some flour. This would be good. I was thinking if you didn't have walnuts, it would be good with sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds. You could probably really substitute any nut that you had on hand. All right. This is huge. I'm going to taste this. That's really good. See, I could just eat this just like it is. It's kind of crunchy from those vegetables being partially cooked. It's really good. I could see throwing some sun-dried tomatoes in this and maybe a little bit of liquid aminos and just eating it, but I think it's going to be really good. Okay, so we can go ahead and get this cooking in the oven, and I'm going to get my potatoes started. I've already got my potatoes cooked, and then we can talk about medication. So, oh, look at that. So I'm just lining a pan, and I'm just going to dump this in. Hopefully it's going to fit. So the original recipe calls for a glaze that would go on this. We're not doing the glaze because it's made of ketchup and vinegar and syrup. Sounds really good though. But we're going to be making a mushroom gravy that I think will be just delightful on this. So now this says to cook it for 20 minutes, but this just seems, I don't know. I'm very skeptical. Let's go ahead and get that in there. Let's just double check and make sure, because when I adapted these, it was late at night. So, okay, so yeah, that's a typo. I typed in 350, cook at 350. Oh, no, it is 50 minutes. Oh, okay. All right, well, I don't know if I'm going to be talking for 50 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I did, Rose. We'll see how it goes. So you guys might not get to see me finish this. We'll just see how long I can talk here, or if you guys stick with me that long. All right, so that's in the oven. Let's go ahead, before we start our topic, I'm just going to throw this stuff into the sink. So I've got my potatoes here, and how I make potatoes, I just usually, I mean, you guys don't need me to tell you how to boil potatoes, but I usually just quarter them, and so I don't even peel them. That way I just peel them, you know, after they've cooked. To me, that's just kind of the easy, lazy way to do it. So these were kind of on the small side. I like these Yukon potatoes. These are the red ones. So I think I've got 6 potatoes in here, and that's enough for either 2 people, or, I don't know, enough for 1 person if you're making enough for leftovers. So I'll probably eat these for dinner tonight, and then I'll have some also for tomorrow for my lunch. So I'm just peeling off the skins here. And these potatoes started to chit, which means they started to sprout. So there's some little sprouts here. I don't know, to me, just like, peeling potatoes has always, I don't know why, it's not a big deal. But if I can get out of it, I will. This is just, to me, it's just a lot easier. So did any of you, hi Eileen, did any of you watch, I know some of you were there on Saturday. I'm curious if any of you had any questions about my talk on hiatal hernias, or if you did the exercise with me, if you noticed anything, if you noticed any gurgling or any relief, or even if you didn't, if you kind of can see how that all kind of makes sense, how unherniating your hernia will eliminate the symptoms that the hernia causes. It's one of those things, you know, when your doctor diagnoses with the hiatal hernia, that's not something they tell you. I kind of had to figure that out on my own, and when I did, it was like, oh my goodness, if I can get rid of this hernia, I can get rid of the symptoms that the hernia causes. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay, so when I make mashed potatoes, I'm going to show you what I do. This is how I get them super duper creamy. So usually when I steam my potatoes, I'll steam about a half of a onion and a couple cloves of garlic in there too, but I'm not doing that because we're doing no garlic and no onions this month. Move my Instant Pot over and my Vitamix forward. So what I do is I put about maybe a third of the potatoes in the blender with a little bit of the reserved potato water. Doesn't take much. And I'm going to blend this in a high-powered blender. And what that does is it just activates the starches in the potatoes, and it makes super creamy potato cream, and then I pour that in and mash it with my potatoes, and add a little salt, and it just makes the texture really, really wonderful. was using the wrong blender, but silly, but you'll see how creamy that is in just a second. Get the water out of there. Okay. The starches are activated and it just makes, this is how I make my cheese sauce too. It was with potatoes, garlic, onions, nutritional yeast, salt and pepper, well, salt, and a little bit of cashews. Just, again, it just makes it so creamy. It's just those starches activated. I don't know that you can do that in a regular blender. You'd have to try and see if you don't have a high-powered blender. Probably it would work fine if you might have to blend it a little bit longer. You want to wash your blender right away because that's like, well, it's starch, it's like glue. Okay, so we mash. I just got a new potato masher. I went to one of those online, I don't know, parties. What was this one? Tupperware. It was a Tupperware party. I got a new potato masher. I didn't need one, but I felt like I felt like I had to buy something. You guys ever go to those parties and you feel kind of like, well, I should probably buy something. It's not that great, to be honest. I think I like my potato masher better. So I drained the water off of these before I started mashing them. I can see I didn't drain it all off, and these are going to be a little bit, they're a little too wet because I put water in those potatoes in there. So the reason I do this is I like the lumps in my mashed potatoes, but I like the creaminess too. Kind of like when we did the bisque the other day, or the squash soup. I like the creaminess, but I like the lumps. I like both. But these are just way too watery. I didn't drain off enough of the water before I started mashing these, so that's okay. I will still eat them and I will still love them. They're not exactly like I like them. I'm just gonna add some salt to these and they're gonna be done. They're creamy. This is more like, I don't know. I think I did a couple things wrong. One, I didn't drain off enough water off my potatoes, and two, I put too many potatoes into the blender. So these are just, they're not very mashy. They're more like creamy, but they're going to be wonderful. I'm not a bit worried about it. I normally kind of clean as I go. I almost have to because my kitchen's so small. I didn't set the timer for that loaf. What's it been, about 5 minutes? All right, so our potatoes are done. Let's move on to the gravy. We should have done the gravy and then the potatoes, but oh well. So I've got 5 mushrooms here. And I'm just gonna whip up a potato gravy, or a mushroom gravy. So depending on, like, I don't know, usually when I make this, I like my mushrooms sliced because I like big chunks of mushrooms. When my husband makes it, he kind of chops them up. So just depending on, I don't know, how you like it, do it the way you like it. But, oh. Okay, see, here's the problem. The pan I need is down here. And I didn't start heating it yet, so now we have to wait. Okay. So that's okay because we can make, so this is how I make my gravy. You guys don't have to do it this way, but this is something that my best friend's mom taught me when I was a little girl. Kelly Zandel's mom, Susan Zandel, taught me this. So you put all your ingredients in here for your gravy in a mason jar and you shake it really, really good. And then you pour it in and just cook it. You don't have to stand there and stir it. You don't have to worry about lumps. So that's just kind of the way I've always done it. So this is a cup of veggie broth or mushroom broth. So I'm going to be doing the mushroom broth. So we put in about a cup of water. And I have my mushroom powder. This is just dried wild mushrooms turned into a flour in my Vitamix. And we're going to do a heaping teaspoon or more, because I love this stuff, of that. And then, so I'm just making my broth right now, my mushroom broth. So we just need, I don't know, I can't remember. I put in a little bit, I put in water, I put in mushroom powder, and I put in liquid aminos. So for this, we're making gravy, so we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of flour or cornstarch. I have that flour out. So this is our thickener. Is that it? And then a teaspoon of sumac. And salt. So I'm just putting those mushrooms in. You could add leeks into this too if you wanted to. Just going to let those start to saute a little bit with a little bit of water. Remember, I'm not using any oil, so I need to kind of watch those so they don't burn. I don't really need that much salt because the liquid aminos is pretty salty. So does the gravy call for milk? Yes, half a cup of milk. That's why I got this out. And you don't have to put milk in this. You could do just broth. This is just going to make it more of a creamy. Excuse me. I just want to make sure it doesn't have vanilla in it. It doesn't say vanilla in it, but I always taste it just to make sure, because I've done that before where I put sweetened milks into recipes where there should be no sweetener. And it ruins it. So those mushrooms are looking good. So to keep them from burning, you just want to keep adding overboard a little bit of water. You guys think that's gross? I remember I'm only feeding myself, so yes, I did just pick up that mushroom off the floor, throw it back in the pan. I'm a recovering germaphobe, by the way. I used to be a germaphobe, and I am no longer. It took me a while to get over that, but Now, bring on the germs. Not really, but kind of. All right, that looks good. Make sure it's not too hot. So we just put this in and let it cook. And it'll thicken because of that flour in there. Just going to bring that to a boil. All right, so I'm going to throw this stuff in the sink, and then we'll start our topic while that cooks. I'm having a hard time waiting for those potatoes. I really want to eat those right now. You guys heard of Norwex? 10-second roll. Thanks, Rose. 10-second roll. I thought it was 5 seconds. That works for me. This is, my sister got me these Norwex rags. I don't know if I've talked about these on here before or not, but I really like them. Looking good. Oh yeah, perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna let that kind of reduce. Make sure it doesn't burn. It's good. All right. You guys see the mashed potatoes? They're really creamy, but they're kind of thin. Oh, but they're good. I like them creamy. Okay. All right, so medications linked to GERD. Terry loves Norwex. You have heard of Norwex. I just heard of it recently, and all of a sudden I'm seeing it pop up everywhere. It's like, when I first heard about it, my sister was telling me about it, and I was like, they're just rags. So what? Who cares? Putting parsley on your mashed potatoes. Oh, that's a good idea. I love flat leaf parsley, and I don't have any right now, or I would do that too. I love flat leaf parsley. That would be good over this entire dish. Okay, so medications linked to GERD. So this is an article that was written by Dennis Thompson, and it was reviewed by Dr. Pat Bass. And you guys can look this up online. It's medications linked to GERD. And basically, he goes through and talks about drugs that can weaken your lower esophageal sphincter. So just like prolonged, dietary fat, saturated fat in your diet has been shown to weaken your lower esophageal sphincter. Prolonged exposure to cigarette smoking, alcohol drinking, all the things we've been talking about, some of the common foods that we're avoiding, how they relax your LES. And I hate that word. It's really, they injure the LES. They're injuring the LES. In a sense, when we're talking about these drugs, it is more of a relaxation, because some of these drugs, that's what they do. They cause things to relax or to dilate or to open up. So a lot of times we take medications that's their function, is to cause things to dilate and open up, right? Because we want everything to be moving throughout our system, right? We don't want to have blockages. We want things to move. And so a lot of these drugs, that's what they do. They're dilators. So that's one, is they weaken the esophageal sphincter. Some drugs worsen inflammation. So if you're a person with GERD and you're taking some of these medications, they can cause additional inflammation to already inflamed and sensitive tissues. And then the third one is drugs that slow digestion. So most of you probably heard of delayed stomach emptying. Some of you probably have delayed stomach emptying. This is something that can happen when you have gastritis or inflammation of the gastric system, where it's just not working properly. If you have weak stomach acid and the food is just getting very slowly digested in the stomach, then you're going to have delayed stomach emptying. It's going to hold on to that food if it knows that it's not chyme yet, or it's not fully digested, but liquefied. It sends it into the small intestine when it's liquefied. When that acid has liquefied, acidified all of that food and turned it into liquid, then it sends it into the small intestine for further digestion and absorption. Okay, but it will slow that down if the food is not getting fully liquefied. And so some foods take longer to liquefy than others. Meat and cheese obviously are going to take longer to liquefy than watermelons and bananas. But some of these drugs cause a slowing of the of digestion, both delayed stomach emptying and delayed digestion through the digestive tract. And I'm just going to go through some of these so that you can better understand what's happening with these different drugs. And I'm going to talk about the drugs. And I already did this at the top of the video, but I'm going to say it again. Disclaimer: I'm not here to tell anyone to discontinue using any of your medications. You're most likely on those prescribed medications for a very good reason, okay? And if you're really not sure, then talk to your doctor. Ask a lot of questions. Fully understand why it is that you need to be taking this medication. See if there are alternatives. If there are alternatives that aren't going to affect your GERD the way these might, okay? But if you hear me list a drug that you're taking, please don't go and throw them down the toilet. That's not what I'm saying, okay? I just want to be really clear on that. So in case you didn't hear me, I'm going to say it once more. I am not advocating that you discontinue the use of your medication. Okay, so the medications that most likely contribute to GERD are the medications that relax the lower esophageal sphincter. So these are kind of the big culprits. These drugs that relax the valve between the esophagus and the stomach and allow the acid to surge in the esophagus that are known to relax the LES and exacerbate GERD include, number one, antidepressants, which, who of us in this country hasn't been on an antidepressant? I was on them for how many years? 3 years, I think, after the loss of my first husband. And I'm a big fan. They helped me a lot. But when it was time to get off of them, it was a real struggle. And I had to work with my doctor in order to do that. So antidepressants tend to work as a muscle relaxant. Examples include, and there are so many examples. I'm not going to read all of these, but basically they work as a muscle relaxant. So remember, your esophagus is a muscle, your stomach is a muscle, your LES is a muscle, and when that food, when those medications are taken, all of those muscles are exposed to that drug, and then of course the drug is absorbed into the body and into the bloodstream. So we want good, strong motility and movement and musculature within the digestive tract. So that's number one, is antidepressants. Number two is cholinergic medications. And these treat nausea, but can cause the LES to relax by affecting the nerves that regulate the sphincter. Examples include Compazine and Phenergan. And you guys can, if you're taking medications and you're wondering about the side effects, you can look them up. You can pull out the little pamphlet that comes with your drugs every time you purchase them. So I don't think they're hiding any of this. They're supposed to have full disclosure on the side effects and the warnings and risks of these drugs, of all medications, at least in the US, as far as I can tell. Okay, number three is asthma medications. And I've been on asthma medications since I'm thinking 9 or 10 years old. I was a little kid when I was diagnosed with asthma. And I no longer take any asthma medication since I went on a plant-based diet. I don't need them. Why that works, I'm really not sure. Why I was allergic to chemicals, perfumes, cleansers, dust, animals, pollens, molds, smoke, anything in the air. I was basically allergic to the air. The only time I was symptom-free was when I was at home in a controlled environment. So I puffed on asthma medications my whole life, so that was probably a contributor for me. Probably a contributor maybe for my hiatal hernia even. Causing all of that to relax, causing I'm pointing up here, the diaphragm to relax, the hiatus to open up, to dilate, to go from being a small little coin slot to, you know, a larger hole so that there's room for that stomach to push through. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about asthma medications at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and move on for now. The next one is sedatives or tranquilizers. These are medications such as diazepam, otherwise known as Valium, and temazepam, otherwise known as Restoril. And then the last one are estrogen replacements. And any medication containing estrogen causes the LES function to weaken. So those are the drugs that cause weakness in the lower esophageal sphincter. This next category are medications that cause inflammation. So these says there are some medications and supplements that directly irritate the lining of the esophagus, and they can exacerbate damage already done by the repeated acid exposure that occurs from GERD. Okay, so these medications include biphosphonates, such as Fosamax, used to treat osteoporosis, potassium supplements, iron pills, antibiotics, which most of us have been on. And you know, if you're on a course of antibiotics once when you were 7 years old, that probably didn't cause your GERD. But especially, you know, if you're having long-term exposure to any of these medications, like for me, I took asthma medications, like I said, since I was a kid, daily, multiple times a day, puffing on inhalers. So antibiotics, and then the last one is quinidine, which is a heart medication. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or otherwise known as NSAIDs, can be particularly harsh on the esophagus and stomach. So these are just your typical pain relievers, such as aspirin, ibuprofen, Motril, Advil, naproxen, or Aleve. So it talks here about a 3-year study, and again, you guys can look this up. The title of the paper is Medications Linked to GERD by Dennis Thompson. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So the third category are medications that slow digestion. So these are drugs that promote GERD by slowing down digestion, prompting the stomach to create excess acid. I don't know about that. That doesn't quite click for me, but we'll keep going. The more acid there is in the stomach, the more likely it is to reflux into the esophagus. That makes sense. If you're on a proton pump inhibitor, that inhibits the production of acid. If you have a little bit of acid in your stomach, it's going to be less likely to make its way up and through that valve. So drugs that slow down digestion include blood pressure medications, such as beta blockers, and that's one of the most commonly prescribed drugs in this country. Calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, these medications work by relaxing the blood vessels. So again, dilators. However, they also relax the smooth muscles of the digestive tract and delay the passage of food through the stomach. So they list a bunch of examples here. I'm not going to read them all. Again, you can look this up if you want to see if what you're taking is in this list. And then the last medication that they suggest that may slow digestion is narcotics like morphine, OxyContin, allowing acid to build up in the stomach. And then it gives a disclaimer, which I will read. If you notice a worsening of GERD symptoms or are experiencing symptoms of GERD for the first time, talk to your doctor about the medications you are taking. There may be alternative treatments available that are less likely to cause GERD, or medications and lifestyle changes, which is what we're doing here, that you can make to lessen GERD symptoms. However, you should never stop taking any prescribed medication without first consulting your doctor. Okay, so I just printed up this study off of PubMed. So if you guys ever want to, if you're interested in what the science has to say about disease and nutrition, pubmed.com or .org, one of those two. It's a great resource for that. That's where they publish the peer-reviewed papers and research. Personally, I don't throw all my trust into, my daughter always gets after me about this, but science and the research, because it can be flawed, it can be swayed, it can be pursued, it can be rigged. It just depends. And it really, there's a course that I really want to take. It's like a 10-month course, and it's not cheap, on learning how to read this stuff, how to interpret this stuff, so that you can really make informed decisions based on sound science. Because a lot of it is just really can't be trusted. But this particular study was done to determine the effect of albuterol, which is a commonly prescribed inhaler for people with asthma, on the function of the lower esophageal sphincter. So albuterol is a drug that is referred to as a beta-2 adrenergic agonist drug, or an adrenergic bronchodilator. So this is usually in inhaler form. You puff it, it goes in, it causes the alveoli, the lungs to relax, to dilate so that we can breathe. When everything gets tight and inflamed, it causes it to relax so that we can take a breath. So this study, and I actually found 2 of them on PubMed. All you have to do is go into PubMed and do a search. This one is called The Effects of an Inhaled Beta-2 Adrenergic Agonist on Lower Esophageal Function. And there were actually 2 studies. So you could just go in there, and in the search bar you could type effect of albuterol or these adrenergic drugs on lower esophageal function, and they'll come up the top 2 studies. So these are great studies. Actually, it is a prospective, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind crossover. So all of the things that need to be in place in order to get results that can be more verified and trustable. The setting was in an academic medical center, and so the conclusions were that inhaled albuterol reduced LES basal tone and contractile amplitudes in the smooth muscle esophageal body. It goes on and on with more big words, but basically it increases the likelihood of acid reflux because of the reduced strength of the lower esophageal sphincter. And again, this is long-term exposure typically, but this particular study, I think it only took place over the course of several weeks. So, and they found the result. They measured the strength of the lower esophageal sphincter, the contractions, the strength of those contractions, the frequency of contractions, and they concluded that it was weakened. And this was interesting. I actually went onto drugs.com, a website called drugs.com, just to look up that term, adrenergic bronchodilators. And it brought up all, because over the years I've been on so many different asthma medications personally, because Big Pharma kept repatenting and changing the medication. So I would go to pick up my medication, I would get a blue inhaler with a different name on it, but yeah, it's the same thing. And I would get a yellow inhaler with a different name on it. And I would get a green inhaler and an orange inhaler and a white inhaler. They would, over the years, they would always change and change and change. So I went on and just kind of looked up the names of some of these different drugs. Or actually just typed into drugs.com, I typed in beta-2 adrenergic agonists or adrenergic bronchodilators, and all of these drugs came up, and all of those drugs that I've been taking since I was 10 years old were on that list. In other words, these drugs in this study that showed a weakening of the LES are the drugs I've been exposing my system to for years and years and years and years and years. So I'm actually surprised I didn't have GERD, as a child or as a young adult. I didn't start having these symptoms until I think maybe my early to mid 30s, and now I'm almost 50. So I've had them for a long time, and I don't have them now, thank God, because I was able to overcome all of that. But anyway, long story short, you can go onto drugs.com and type in the that category, and it will bring up all of these bronchodilators basically. So if you're concerned, you know, you've got some work to do. And it starts by talking to your doctor, working with your doctor, and of course what we're doing here if you do have asthma. I mean, ideally speaking and typically speaking, I mean, the goal with plant-based eating, I mean, here in this challenge, we're trying to reduce and eliminate GERD symptoms. But the more you expose yourself to people's testimonies who went on a plant-based diet, and it's not 100% of the time, but it's a large majority of the time, people will tell you stories about how they overcame a wide variety of illnesses, including asthma and allergies, including GERD, including hiatal hernia. So if you haven't already, you can go over to Dr. John McDougall's website. He has testimonies there. And I know the Forks Over Knives website used to have tons of testimonies there as well, but I think they moved them to their Forks Over Knives Instagram page. Last I checked, they had moved them to their Forks Over Knives Instagram page. They still had testimonies there, but not like pages and pages and pages. But start reading some of these testimonies, just people who went on a plant-based diet, and here's what happened. Well, Rose is asking about H. pylori. So H. pylori is the Helicobacter pylori bacteria, and it's a naturally residing bacteria in our bodies. But the trouble is when people get an H. pylori infection, it's when that particular bacteria has overcolonized, right? And anytime you have an overcolonization of a bad bacteria, pathogen, parasites, you know, these critters that do harm within us, which, you know, they reside within us naturally. It's the good bacteria's job to kind of keep those bad bacteria and pathogens in check. That's why we have to have this wide diversity and this great harmony and balance of the good and the bad. But when the good get killed out and they can't make their way back, then the bad survive and flourish. And so when you get an H. pylori infection, basically what happens is these bacteria, what they like to do is burrow into the lining of your stomach. And then that can cause ulcers in your stomach because they're in there kind of just munching away at the lining, the mucous membrane of your stomach, and causing all kinds of trouble. And it's a very kind of a stubborn infection that can take a long time to overcome. Rose, I'll address your comment after the live. It's too big for me to read the whole thing. But she's talking about being on antibiotics and a PPI. So when we take antibiotics, those wipe out the good bacteria, and they can kill the H. pylori, which is good. But it's so important then to build that good bacteria back up. I really want to read the rest of your comment, but I'm going to move on. So how are we doing on time? Oh, we see we got another 20 minutes. So what I think I'm going to do, whoa, you guys should have told me my gravy was boiling over back here. I hope I didn't burn it. Oh, I did, I burned it. Well, I didn't burn it, but I reduced it down so much that there's hardly any left. It's not burned though, thank goodness. It's just got all kinds of... Call me when I'm doing the live. Oh good, this is totally edible. It's got kind of the thickened on the bottom. So I think what I'm going to do, guys, is I've got some broccoli back there. I'm going to give that a quick steam, and I'm going to plate this up and try it without the lentil loaf. But I'll be sure and post a picture of that and let you know how it turned out in the Facebook group. So So I didn't turn this down enough, and it was just back here thickening and kind of sticking to the pan, but it looks like I saved it. Whew! Thank goodness. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to give that about 2 minutes to cook my broccoli. But I wanted to show you guys what we're going to be making next week, what I'm going to be making. So continue to upload your pictures if you try any of these recipes and let us all know how they turned out. So next week, I believe, where's my schedule? Oh, I think it's actually, I'm really looking forward to sharing this avocado dish. Oh man, the pictures in this recipe are so beautiful. That's why I bought this cookbook. I love good pictures. So this is similar to that fajita bowl we're going to be making. I'm pretty sure I've got that on the list. Make sure that's the right burner. Okay, hang on, I'm looking for, I think I passed it. So I'm just cooking some broccoli in the background. Broccoli is kind of my go-to side dish, just because I like it and it's so nutritious and good for you. They have done so much research on broccoli, and I am telling you, eat your broccoli. Cool, Rose. I hope you like them. They're one of my favorites. So that's the pasta dish I'm going to be making, the avocado, creamy avocado pasta with the basil in it. I think it's got basil in it. Yeah. But I think next week we're going to be doing corn chowder, which is one of my absolute favorite dishes. I don't have my schedule out here. I think we're going to be either doing the fiesta bowl or the fajita bowl, which is just a Mexican dish. All right. I'm going to fill up on mashed potatoes before that lentil loaf is even done. Mark my words. So had I been paying attention, I would have added more liquid to that gravy. It got really, really thick. Okay, hang on. Why does my phone keep doing this? All right. Okay, that broccoli is too hot to eat, but there's the mashed potatoes and gravy, mushroom gravy. Put it close enough and it'll steam up the foam. Oh my gosh. If you like mushrooms, you guys, mushroom gravy, you'll never make regular gravy again. One of the things I like to do for a treat is make vegan biscuits, which isn't hard. I just use I just use this replacement Earth Balance butter, which isn't a health food, but once in a while for special occasions. But yeah, biscuits, and then, you know, a lot of recipes are so easy to adapt. Non-dairy butter, non-dairy milks. So I make these big, fluffy, yummy biscuits and put this mushroom gravy on it. Oh, those potatoes actually turned out so good. If you like mushrooms too, I know I've already suggested this, but I'm going to do it again in case we have any new people here watching. I got these at Costco. I know it's backwards, but it's basically this huge container of dried gourmet mixed mushrooms. And I can't remember how much it was, but it wasn't that expensive. I wouldn't have bought it if it was super expensive because I'm kind of cheap. But so you just put these, I bought it to put into soups and casseroles, but I didn't like the texture of them. But I put them in my high-powered blender, my Vitamix, and make like a flour. Just make like a powder. And then when you make your broth, you just do this with water and the liquid aminos, which is what makes it salty, gives it a lot of salty flavor. And so for this gravy, like you saw, we just mix that with any kind of thickener and cooked mushrooms. Oh my goodness. I actually like these potatoes just the way they are. They're kind of thin, but they're super creamy. The mushrooms, Rose? Yeah. So this, I just sauteed up a few mushrooms. Like when I made this year for Thanksgiving, oh my gosh, I sauteed up a whole huge big thing. I made like a huge pot of gravy because my daughter and I are both vegan. And the whole family just lapped up that gravy. I mean, I don't think there was any to bring home for leftovers. It was really good. All right, guys. That still has another 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, I will post the picture of the lentil loaf on the group and I'll let you know how it turned out. And I'll be honest, because I'm already pretty skeptical as to whether I'm going to like that or not. But it was good raw before I cooked it. So I bet it'll be good, especially with the gravy on it. I might even cheat and put a little bit of ketchup on there. I'm just being honest. Out of solidarity, I said I wouldn't, but ketchup is like one of my absolute favorite foods. I put it on a lot of stuff. I love ketchup, so we'll see. If it's good with just the gravy, then we'll leave it alone, but all right. Okay, so that's it. I hope everybody has a wonderful and safe night wherever you're at, and we'll be back here in the kitchen on Thursday. Thank you for watching.